Well, the Supreme Court yesterday, being Thursday, affirmed President Bola Tinubu of the All Progressive Congress (APC) as the valid winner of the presidential election they held in the country on February 25. Now, the Apex Court, in its lead judgment that was prepared and read by Justice Inyango Koro, held that there was no merit in the petition that a former president and candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, filed to nullify the outcome of the election. It held that Atiku did not prove that the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) did not substantially comply with provisions of the Electoral Act in the conduct of the election. It held that evidence contained in the record of the appeal showed that the appellants abandoned the duty imposed on them by the law to not only prove the alleged non-compliance, but to establish that failure of INEC to transmit results of the election via the IREF portal influenced the outcome of the presidential poll. Well, joining us virtually to discuss this whole event, we have Nick Agule and Chukwuma Okoro, both of them public affairs analysts. They'll probably get a lawyer on as well, so we'll look at it from the angle of the law. But let's welcome the gentlemen, Nick and Chukwuma. Good morning to you. I'm going to throw this question to the both of you. I'd like your responses one after the other. The day has come and gone. Victory has been given to the president. And I want to believe that you went through the process, you watched it. What are your thoughts? I'm going to start with you, Chukwuma. Good morning.
Good morning, Moses. Good morning, Nick. Good morning, viewers. Thank you, Moses. Like you rightly said, the day has come and gone. We expected yesterday to come. Personally, I would be surprised if anybody is surprised about the outcome of the Supreme Court judgment. Yes, because it's like it was foretold right from the beginning. The process was apparently rigged to favor a particular candidate, and that is exactly what has happened. Unfortunately for us, after how many years of a new democracy of the Fourth Republic, 24 years to be very precise, we are still battling with trying to get an electoral process that is transparent and credible, not only to Nigerians, but to the whole world. We have missed that. In 2007, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua did admit that the process that brought him in was eminently flawed. And we are looking at how many years ago? About 11 years ago or thereabout. And he made efforts to ensure that the system was rejigged so that we could come up with credible and transparent election. Unfortunately, the more we have tried to move forward, the backward we seem to be moving. The president was finally declared the winner of the elections yesterday by the Supreme Court. No fanfare in the whole of Nigeria. Everywhere is very quiet. Everywhere is very calm. No jubilation. Even sincere members of his party understand clearly that our democracy has been murdered and that there is judicial malfeasance. The very few people that are celebrating it are people in the corridors of power who will probably benefit from the rot in the system. Incidentally, Nigerians don't even know that we are building a culture, political culture, an identity with which not just us, but the international community will come to know us with. It's very unfortunate. We are yet to realize that. Moses, when you see an American, what comes into your mind is pragmatism, freedom, democracy. When you look at the Briton, the thing that strikes you is this guy is tricky because of the history of imperialism, which they used to dominate the whole world. If you look at a German, the first thing that strikes you is, oh, this person is likely to be wicked, very wicked. If you look at the antecedents from 1914 in the Herero massacre and the Holocaust. If you look at the Colombian, the only thing that comes into your mind, oh, I hope this guy is not doing drugs with me. If you look at the South, for people in my generation, if you look at the South African, the thing that comes to your mind immediately is apartheid and Nelson Mandela. And now, if somebody looks at the Nigerian, the immediate thing that comes into one's mind is, I hope this guy is not a fraudster. I hope he's not forged documents that he's coming to deal with me. That is exactly the identity we are creating. And you know, it takes a very long time to build an identity, a political identity. And it takes a longer time, if it's a bad one, to come back and rebuild it into a better one. Look at what the Supreme Court itself said. The Supreme Court did admit that the non-transmission of the election results through the IREV may reduce the confidence of the electorate in the electoral process. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that they even understand that they didn't do the right thing. Unfortunately, the law gave them a lacuna. But it's difficult for me, like you said, we need to bring in a lawyer to come and explain some of these things. I understand Festus Okoye, the INEC Commissioner for Information, did say last year consistently that it is mandatory to transmit the polling unit level results electronically. And the Supreme Court turns around to tell us that it is at the discretion of INEC. Okoye, who is even a lawyer, said it was mandatory according to Section 54, subsection 4 of the 2022 Electoral Act. When the Electoral Act was signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari, everybody was happy. There was jubilation all over the land that at least you will not just vote, but your vote will count. But we have seen all that disappear with in just few minutes that about 7 individuals sat
all right
and took the fate of millions of us into their hands.
All right.
Moses, if you ask me, we are going backwards. We are not moving forward. Very unfortunate.
Okay. Unfortunately, as you have put it, it's going to be a long conversation. It's not going to just end on the show. So let's get Nick's views as well before we delve into some other parts of what happened yesterday. Nick, good morning to you once again.
Yeah, good morning, Moses, and good morning to our viewers globally. My summation of what has happened is that what has happened has happened. It's not history. It cannot be changed. President Tinubu is Nigeria's president for the next 4 years. So for me, the attention should turn to the future. What are we going to do differently? And this is where I believe that the National Assembly has got its job cut out for it. They must begin immediately the work of amending our electoral laws, either via the Constitution or the Electoral Act, to plug the loopholes that we have seen, which has allowed people to exploit and fail to give Nigerians a free, fair, and credible elections. Like my co-panelist said, Chukuma, if the Supreme Court of Nigeria says certain conduct by the electoral umpire has reduced the confidence, has eroded the confidence of Nigerians in the electoral process, that is a dangerous thing, because everything we should be doing should be to engender that confidence, to bring Nigerians to the ballot so that we have more people participate in a country of over 200 million people, of which at least 100 million are of voting age. We had a presidential election that registered less than 30 million votes. It is not good. And I believe that INEC should take that statement made by the Supreme Court seriously. And so the National Assembly just has to go to work. Or for me, all of the issues that were determined by the Supreme Court, and I mean by the Presidential Electoral Court and then the Supreme Court, all require amendments to our electoral jurisprudence. And I'm going to speak in details on each of them as we progress.
All right then.
Okay, Nick, I'm going to start with you as well. So the chairman of the APC said something yesterday, Ganduje Abdullahi. He said that he congratulated the president, and he also said that it's a good thing that the opposition party resulted to the judiciary, and that the judiciary has done well from the verdict that was passed on yesterday. And he also said something that means that Nigeria is getting better and that democracy in Nigeria is becoming better. Now, I want to ask, what do you think is the reflection of this verdict? Do you think the reflection that there is really, let me say, what he said, is that really true? How does this verdict give the reflection of independence and integrity to the Nigerian judiciary?
So I am not a fan of the Nigerian judiciary, given their antecedents. We have had a judiciary that has delivered judgments that they themselves cannot explain. As I speak today, they are unable to explain why Ahmed Lawan is back in the Senate as a senator of the Federal Republic. They cannot explain how Pope Uzodinma, who pulled fourth position in the Imo global elections, the last cycle, is today finishing his term as governor of Imo State. So the Nigerian judiciary, no doubt, has got a lot of questions hanging on them in terms of their performance in office. They have not shown courage to do what they have sworn to oath to do. And I think it's a feedback they have to take home. At the end of the day, all of us who are alive today, we are going to die and go away. What are we going to leave behind? Till today, Americans are talking about the founding fathers, their founding fathers, those people who sat together and wrote the Constitution. That is the legacy they have been left behind, which the generations after them are being remembered for. We want our judicial officers to know that whatever legacy they leave now is going to be there in generations to come. And they should show courage and they should do what requires of them, regardless of what is going to happen, because they are on seat now. But having said that, I also want to say that judges cannot decide on matters that are not before them. Judges can only decide on issues that have been tabled before them, and they can only decide those issues in line with the laws existing at that time. And this is where, for me, our laws need to totally be overhauled. For instance, I'll give you an example. As of today, if I contest an election and I believe that I was rigged out of the election, I won the election, but my opponent was granted victory. The Nigerian law as we have today requires me, who lost the election, to prove that I won the election. And in my bid to prove that I won the election, the electoral umpire is a defendant. He's against me in court. So I now need to go to the man that I'm taking a case against and say, give me document, let me go and prove my case against you. This is what our law today says. And the man is not ready to give me those documents for me to go and win the case against him. And how do we solve that kind of thing? Very simple. The law needs to be changed, whereby if I stand for election and I believe that I was rigged out of the election, the electoral umpire is the one that should come to court and prove that I actually lost the election, and that the person that they declared as the winner in a transparent, fair, credible manner is the one that won the election. So that will force the umpire to bring to court the documents to prove that I have no case. As simple as that, this will turn around electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria and will make the work of the judges easier. So on every point, as was decided by the Supreme Court yesterday, it only requires a change in our electoral law. For instance, I'll give you another example. To the shock of my life, we ended up with a situation where electronic transmission of result was not mandatory. I, like my co-panelist Chukuma said, I was one of those who were jubilating when the Electoral Act was signed, thinking that electronic transmission was there. Because you know why? This electronic transmission was a huge debate in the National Assembly. You can recall that at a point, there were National Assembly members that say, oh, there is no data coverage in all of Nigeria. And so this provision, if it's mandated, will be a problem. There was a time that an amendment to the bill was made whereby the Nigerian Communication Commission, we have to agree that, okay, yes, there is a data in that place to mandate electronic transmission. And then it came out and said, no, Nigerian Communication Commission cannot be made to give INEC a go-ahead, because INEC is a constitutional body that cannot depend on someone. Do you remember? Does anybody recall all those things that were happening that time? They were only for electronic transmission. And I thought that electronic transmission was mandated. Only for how it happened, I don't know. It ended up that electronic transmission was not in the Electoral Act, but it was in the electoral guidelines. For me, the judges to even say that electoral guidelines were not part of the law was wrong. Because if the law says Nikagule must be 18 years before he will vote, and then there is a guideline that says for him to vote, he must show his birth certificate, declaration of age or something, and somebody is saying that guideline is not part of the law, it's wrong. And this is where the judges have questions hanging on their head. But bottom line here is that the national...
All right, so we seem to have a glitch in the network there with Nick.
Let's simply must now go back to the drawing board. Laws, can you hear me? They must amend the electoral laws via the Constitution, via the Electoral Act, to mandate electronic transmission of results. This is what we need to do now. Going forward, we must dust up and clean up all the areas that made this election not to look credible, fair, and free.
All right then. Now, Chukuma, let me quickly come to you now. Is this an issue of our laws? All right. Is this an issue of our laws or the interpretation of the laws? I know we've always said the law itself is not the problem. The Constitution is not the problem, but we have these things on paper, and then the court of law has interpreted them in a way that has educated Nigerians, in a different light. What is this actually?
Yes, Moses, is a very good question, because I was going to certainly disagree with Nick. We don't have issues with our laws. We don't have issues with our laws. The issue is interpretation. Take, for instance, the Constitution says, and the Electoral Act says, that anybody that, before you become a president of this country, you must win 2/3 of the 36 states and Abuja.
But
Look at
that has been established. That has been established that it really
yes,
doesn't matter. Abuja is now a state. It's just like another state.
exactly. So how what has that got to do with our law? How do we start interpreting and? Because the article there is and. Is it article or what? The word there is and. How do we start interpreting it? Go back to 1979. What happened? Two-thirds of 19 states. I mean, it was very clear. It was very clear. Even when Awolowo went to court, the Supreme Court also decided that, look, it was Shagari that won the elections. And somebody is coming to say that Abuja does not have a special status. So why did the Constitution and Electoral Act in the first place put that clause into the law? Our problem is not our laws. Our problem is interpretation. And the ruling class, very smart when it comes to issues that protect their interests. They are very smart to have open small windows, to create small lapses with which they can escape. But when it comes to running the economy to make Nigerians happy, to make Nigerians healthy, to make Nigerians more educated, to make Nigerians prosperous, it becomes an issue for them. Back to what Nick said. The Electoral Act says, Section 64, subsection 4, Okoye repeatedly said it, that it was mandatory from polling unit level to transmit results electronically. And it even went ahead to say that before you upload electronically, you must have collected manually. And if at a point there's a discrepancy or there are conflicts between the manual and the electronic clearly takes precedence. There is no part of, there is network in Sambisa. There is no part of this country that MTN, Glo, Airtel have not covered. There is no part of this country that you cannot do your internet banking transactions on the internet. If anybody is telling us that, look, there was no network here and there, it is a lie from the pit of hell. INEC knows what it is doing. The other week, Jega disagreed with the provisions for appointing who becomes the chairman, the helmsman of the umpire. He said the best thing to do is to remove it from the hand of the president and put it somewhere else so that it will be more plural, so that a lot of factors will be considered. Do you know that in some clients, electoral umpires themselves pass through the elections to be appointed? No single individual has the power to appoint the electoral umpire in some clients that are serious with refining the electoral process. But here it is domiciled in the office of the president. The president appoints. So how do we ensure the independence of the institution that was appointed by the president? Moses, there is nothing wrong with our laws. It is just about interpretation, and it borders on self-interest of the ruling class, of the elite. The way we are going, I keep saying it will get to a point where all of us will come to a standstill. It is at that point that we will now say, okay, guys, come, let's talk. How are we going to make this country work? And let me point out one thing. If at this age I cannot speak truth to power, then I wonder at what age that I will. The judgment was given yesterday. Everywhere is calm. I just imagine if it was an Easterner, if it was a Southerner, if it was a Northerner that went through this process and emerged victorious, even with all the loopholes, my brother, my Yoruba brothers, the West would have been on fire by this moment. Look at what happened in June 12th. But everywhere is calm. Just because it is our Yoruba brother that has won the election. Nobody is talking. Even when they speak in very hostile because they know that, look, evil has been done. It is as clear as that. It is as clear as that. And it speaks to the whole tribal politics, ethnic politics that keeps... See, we can't make progress like this until we try to build a Nigerian nation. Until we try to build a Nigerian nation, we can't make progress.
Okay,
that is just it. There is nothing... There is no problem with our laws. It's just the
There
interpretation.
was jubilation in Abuja. I mean, we saw a few people celebrating. So I wonder when you say everywhere was quiet.
I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy you said a few people. I'm happy you said a few people.
All right.
Was there jubilation in the south? Was there jubilation in the north? Was there jubilation in part in Lagos, in Osun State? Everybody, everywhere is calm. The only jubilation I have seen on air is the one that is in the presidential office, where Julian Gelale and the rest of them went to, and his ADC went to give him the 5-star general salute. That's the only one I've seen. I've not seen any other one.
Okay. Let me come back to Nick now. Nick, why do you think this was brought forward? I mean, Nigerians were expecting this judgment to come much later, say in December. Why do you think this was brought forward? Was there any need to rush? And do also bear in mind that there is the FBI report, the 2,500 page on the president that is supposed to be released, sometime in December. Is it November or December now?
30th of October.
30th of October. Okay, 30th of October.
October, 30th of October, yes.
Do you think that had anything to do with, bringing this judgment forward like it was done?
Well, I don't think so. We have to realize that the electoral law has been amended and has provided a timeline for determination of electoral cases. So the Presidential Election Tribunal has 6 months. I think the Supreme Court has 2 months or 3 months. I can't remember. So they have to work within the laws. So there's no way they could have delivered judgment in December.
Okay.
But let me quickly disagree with my co-panelist Chukwuma. He says that there is nothing wrong with our laws. It's only interpretation. I think I want to alter that. I want to alter that to say it's both. We have a problem of the laws, we have a problem of interpretation. So both the laws and interpretation need to be reformed. And I can give a few examples. Yesterday, after this results were declared, I wrote a social media post. And maybe before I even go about the points I raised in my social media post, I want to give a very good example of how the laws can be changed and it will add value to the electoral process. One of the cases that were filed by former President Buhari in his 3 unsuccessful attempts at the presidency lasted for over 3 years. The judges delivered that judgment. I think President Obasanjo was the one who was in office, was almost finishing his term before the Supreme Court delivered judgment. And what happened? The electoral law was amended to now say the Presidential Election Tribunal has only 180 days. And you can see that that has added value to our electoral process. So we can't say our laws are sufficient. So let me give another example. We're talking about mandating the electronic transmission. It was not in the Electoral Act, it was in the electoral guidelines. Since the judiciary have said the guidelines are not part of the laws, it's just a question of moving electronic transmission out of guidelines into the act. It will solve the problem. Talk about President Tinubu had 15 million Nigerians say no to him. They put their votes to other candidates. Only 8 million Nigerians, 8.7, I think, if I remember the numbers, said yes to President Tinubu. So we have a president who majority of Nigerians say no to him and is ruling over Nigerians. That's not democracy. Democracy is a rule by majority. So the Electoral Act needs to be amended, and the Constitution as well, to say that you must at least get 51% of the vote. So that needs to be added in addition to the 2/3, 25% in 2/3 across the nation and all of that. That is where the law can add value. I can also tell you that when you swear in someone, like President Tinubu now has been in office acting as president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces, it's going to be difficult to remove him. He has power of incumbency. He has Nigeria's resources at his disposal to prosecute his electoral victory. The only thing we need now to solve that is change the Electoral Act and the Constitution to mandate elections to hold and to hold before the time that is allowed for judicial processes to end. Say, for instance, if we hold election in November of the preceding year, we have 6 months, which the law mandates now for judicial processes to end, so that the person that is going to be sworn into office is the person that not only INEC declared as winner, but the court also confirmed as the winner. So that we don't give that person the powers that they have when they sit in office, and people are trying to remove them from that office. That is where the law can also be changed to add value to the electoral process.
All right, then.
The law has to be changed to allow for independent candidature. If Nikagule wants to contest the election and he believes that his people will vote him because he's popular, he should not be boxed into going to a political party where he will come under godfathers who will extract all sorts of promises from him before they make him the candidate of the party, so that when he wins, he is no longer serving his people, but he's serving the godfathers. Clearly, the law can be changed for independent candidature. I am a diasporan. As a Nigerian in the diaspora, I cannot vote. I cannot have a say in the determination of the person who is ruling my country, my state, my local government, representing me at the various legislatures. Small countries like Chad, Benin Republic have diaspora voting. Nigeria does not have diaspora voting. For what reason? Nobody knows. The law needs to be changed to allow us Nigerians in the diaspora to vote. And let me tell you one thing. Once Nigerians in the diaspora are allowed to vote, there will be a game changer. Number one, diaspora will be more difficult to rig. Diaspora votes will be more difficult to buy. So the millions of Nigerians in the diaspora can actually determine the outcome of elections. And once politicians know that, politicians will now be more careful within the shenanigans that they carry out. Because they know that if they are not competent, they are not delivering, the diaspora will vote against them. I have already spoken about the other one, which is INEC should be the one that proves that the result they declared is legit. Not the person who has already lost the election. His opponent is already sitting in the executive office with all the resources of state at his disposal. And you want this man now to go and prove that INEC was wrong. And the man is depending on INEC to give him the document to prove that INEC is wrong. So I don't agree with my co-panelists that there's nothing wrong with our laws. Of course, there's so much that is still wrong with our laws. And again, we also have the issue of interpretation. That is where I will leave it. All
right then. Thank you very much, Nick. That was quite elaborate. Chukuma, let me quickly come to you now. In this, the fact that the Supreme Court dismissed the PDP's evidence, the new evidence that was supposed to be brought before it. How does that make you feel? Because a lot of Nigerians felt that, okay, since the law had said it is the prerogative of the Supreme Court to hear new evidence if it so deems fit, with the outcry on social media and the talk about Nigeria's image in the international arena, a school of thought felt, okay, maybe the Supreme Court would have, invoked its prerogative to entertain new evidence, but that was not the case here. How does that make you feel?
Okay, Moses, I'll come back to. Let me deal once and for all the issue Nick and I have been talking about.
Okay, just
if you talk about we can argue interminable on end. The issue I raised, which I still insist on, is that there is no problem with our laws.
That's your point.
Nick is talking about. Nick is talking about there's a form and a character of the law. These are two different things. There's a form and a character of the law. Most of the things he is talking about is about the character of the law. diaspora voting. You have not settled with home voting. You are trying to bring diaspora that you cannot even handle the home one. You are talking again about on top of my head, there's something he said about the National Assembly amending laws. By amending laws, you can expunge or you can add. Yes, you can expunge or you can add. I did say the other day on this TV that it will be imperative and it will be better for us if we use the time after the election and before the swearing in to dispense with all the electoral cases, so that the person that is probably sworn in and that has executive powers will not have access to state power, to state resources, to use it to protect himself and fight his opponent. That is a point he made, which I clearly agree with. But on the issue, on other issues, I think he's talking clearly about the characters of the law, which changes from time to time, and not the form of the law. The form of the law is what exactly do we have now, and how do we use that to get what we want? These are the issues. Like I said, we can argue on and on. I still go back to the issue of FCT, 2/3 of 36 states and the FCT, until somebody tells me what that "and" means. To mean that, or to say that Abuja does not have a special status, it will be difficult for me to clearly understand the meaning of "and." Moses, to your question, the moment the Supreme Court's rule says it was discretionary on them to accept fresh evidence, that was when I knew that, look, they were going to throw out articles quest to add new evidence to pursue his case. I knew it was going to come to that, because we already have an antecedent with our judiciary, even at the Supreme Court, where they say one thing today and tomorrow they say another thing, using the open windows, what they call technicalities in the law, to protect themselves and give power to whoever they want to. I've said it severally here that an interpretation of the law, which I've come to realize that it's a fact, is that the law is most times the will of the stronger party. If the president could bamboozle everybody, the judges, the INEC, the opponents, to get through, even when Nigerians understand primarily that he has questions with his certificate and a whole lot of other issues, then there's an issue with our judiciary. I want to add about what your colleague asked about Ganduje. What did you expect Ganduje to say? If the Supreme Court had upturned the victory of the president, would he have said the same thing? And that speaks to the kind of people we have as our leaders. Ganduje has no business being the national chairman of the APC. This is a man who was caught on camera taking bribe and hiding it inside his cap. And today he's preaching democracy to Nigerians. What do they think of us? As fools? As idiots? No, we are not. It's not going to last forever. There's always a day of reckoning, and it will come very soon. I like what is happening because it's fast-tracking the inevitable.
Okay, Chukuma, there's yesterday after the verdict, I want to ask this question. The Supreme Court said that INEC's failure to transmit the elections results electronically, not enough ground to nullify Tinubu'S victory. And then the veteran actor, Kenneth Okonkwo, also mentioned that that was the only thing that the Supreme Court agreed to, that it actually reduced the confidence that the people have in elections. Moving forward, do you think that this, in the next 4 years, that Nigerians or the youth would actually want to come out to vote? What are your thoughts on these things being said?
Before you respond, let's actually listen to Kenneth Okonkwo when he spoke after the judgment was delivered.
Issue of forfeiture as a fine imposed on the second respondent for the proceeds of narcotics and money laundering by the District Court of Illinois. I sat down through, I did not hear it, and I wonder whether that was swept under the carpet or was an oversight because the lead judgment was detailed on all other issues, and they said all the issues there have been overtaken by event in all our own issues, and I did not hear the issue of the forfeiture. And so that's why I said I disagree respectfully, even though the decision is binding.
How about the 2% issue has also been laid to rest?
Yes, it has been laid to rest. The Supreme Court has the authority to interpret the Constitution. It is their prerogative as the arm of government imbued with the power to interpret. That is the interpretation they have given to it.
All right, now this is where he spoke. He spoke about the forfeiture, which the Supreme Court was silent about. Well, we'll come back to that one. What Ms. Masinachi was asking was about when he said what was your
Yes, when he said that not uploading the
yes, that
the result
he was
electronically.
happy. He was happy
Yes.
that the Supreme Court agreed to the fact that the non-uploading of results on IREV, added to the voters losing confidence in elections in Nigeria. How do you respond to that? Now, as you make to respond, also respond to what Kenneth Okonkwo said about the Supreme Court seeming silence on the issue of certificate forgery that was before it, even during the PEPC.
Okay, I was happy too. I was happy too when the Supreme Court made that pronouncement that the non-transmission of the results through the IREV was going to eminently reduce the confidence of Nigerians in the electoral process. And I'm trying to marry it with what I got to hear from Nick, that the Supreme Court said that some of the guidelines were not in the Electoral Act, So the Supreme Court itself clearly understands that infraction on the electoral process is going to affect the confidence of Nigerians going forward. And Nigerians as a people, we are less of docile, if you ask me. We are a country of anything goes, because if we are not a country of anything goes, you will discover that 1/3 of this, what happens in Nigeria, if it happens elsewhere, this country will be in flames. But everybody is calm. Everybody, people on X, even when indices here and there about the happiest people on earth show that we are about 100 and something on that ranking. But eminently, we are very happy people. What Fela says, smiling, suffering, and smiling and suffering, suffering and smiling. That is who we are, And in the future, I want you to mark down this day, 2027. Except something drastic is done, these 15 million votes that we got, we won't get up to 11 million votes at the presidential election level. Because people will be laid back, people will be withdrawn. They will say, why am I going to waste my time? After all, the whole thing is already predetermined.
Yeah,
God bless President Tinubu. He is still the president as at that time.
I was going to ask you.
People will take it for granted.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you that later. I was leaving that for later. How this election would affect voter apathy, or the voters in the long run in future elections.
In 2027, yes, 2027, because most Nigerians already believe that our president is a game man, someone who gets whatever he wants from any part of the world. Look at how the Supreme Court quietly, silently, nobody mentioned about the forfeiture. Nobody mentioned about the certificate forgery. The only thing that was mentioned was articles that the article doesn't have the right to submit fresh evidence to pursue his case, a case that was dismissed at the PEPT level. It was not mentioned. The only thing the Supreme Court hammered on was the transmission of IREV and technically dismissed every other issue. Dismissed the issue of the transmission of results. What does that tell you? And tomorrow you want me to come stand in the sun to cast my vote for who? Somebody I believe that has already taken the process in his hands even before the process has started. It's going to be a very tough call, except something drastic is done to ensure that, look, step by step. Okay, if they say the transmission was a guideline, let them marry the guideline into the Electoral Act. I now agree with Nick that the National Assembly has its work cut out for it. If there's anything they need to do, if there are guidelines that are not in the Electoral Act, let them put those guidelines let them codify them into the Electoral Act. And please, let nobody tell us that there is no network to transmit results. There is network everywhere.
All right, then.
There is network everywhere. Okay. In my village, my village is about the remotest part of this country that empties into the ocean. There is network. If I want to transfer money from when I'm in the village to anybody in Nigeria, I can do it.
You just choose your provider.
Thank you. Nick, this question is for you. So the president has urged Obi and Atiku to elevate their patriotic spirit and support his administration. What do you make of this?
I'm happy that myself and Chukuma have finally agreed. You know, you said he agrees with me. So we are now on the same.
That's fine. That's fine.
So at least I still take that as way forward, because you know, at the end of the day, we all need to be on the same wavelength. We all need to be moving, pulling together on this journey so that we can actually change Nigeria, one of the most beautiful countries you can ever find in the world, in all ramifications. And let me also make a clarification. The Supreme Court actually decided on the certificate issue. What they said was that the evidence of the certificate issue was introduced at the appellate court. It needed to have been introduced at the court of first jurisdiction, which is the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. In fact, they even said that Atiku Abubakar had, from the time that President Tinubu'S nomination was approved and published by INEC, to have even started the pre-election matter on the distance, you know, so on the certificate thing. So my own there is that I would have loved the Supreme Court to have still made a ruling. That is, a court can say, we are not taking this evidence because you are introducing it at the appellate court. However, if this evidence had come to us from the court of first instance, this is our judgment about it. I think that would have added to Nigeria's jurisprudence. We would have known, because you know, this is the same country where the governor of Bayelsa State, you know, I feel for him, because the evening before he will be sworn in the next day, he was at the stadium practicing swearing in ceremony, climbing onto that police ceremonial truck, coming down and all of that. And then when he went home, the Supreme Court said the certificate of your running mate has an issue, and therefore your election is annulled. In this same country, you understand? It is in this same country that Salisu Buhari had to step down as a speaker of the House of Representatives and also lost his seat in the House of Representatives because he forged his age. But now people have different ages in different documents, and it doesn't seem that it's a problem anymore. So for me, I would have wanted the Supreme Court to enrich our jurisprudence by making a determination on that certificate issue and say, well, they are not taking it, but this is what they would have said if it had come to them in the rightful way. Now, coming to what the victors in the elections will say, it's expected now, if you win an election, and I mean, I agree with my co-panelist, Chukuma, when I see people like Ganduje on TV, you know, talking about Nigeria, I feel sad, to be honest, because these are people that, you know, have had a lot of baggage. You know, how about we're 200 million people? Must it be these people who have this kind of baggage that will come onto international television and be saying they are ruling Nigeria? I mean, this thing, like what Chukuma said, as some of us, you know, we have been privileged to travel. I carry my green passport anywhere I go, I receive special treatment. And that special treatment is the special treatment of giving me, taking me down to the ground and rubbing feet on my body. That is the thing. The value of the passport is not good. So I don't expect them to have said anything. They have won an election. The court said yes, they won an election, and they are happy. They can make all sorts of statements. But honestly, I still maintain my position that the National Assembly has got its job cut out. That's what we just need to do. We need to have a better election. And but let me also talk about, I disagree with my co-panelist, Chukuma. Chukuma says diaspora voting is not needed because we have not even handled the local voting. How bad? Please, sir, be fair to us. You understand? It is the diaspora voting that we even sanitize the local voting. Because President Tinubu, for instance, won election with about 2 million votes. If the diaspora voted 5 million against him, he will not be president today.
All right then.
You know, so please help us join. Let's have the diaspora voting.
All right then. Thank you very much, Nick Agule. We appreciate you for your thoughts, and because we're running out of time now, so let's get Chukwuma's thoughts as well before we wrap up this part of the show. Chukwuma, your final thoughts.
Okay. Yes, my final thought. Nigeria is the struggle continues. The lucha continua. You know, the struggle continues. Nobody will build Nigeria for us except Nigerians. Nobody will build Nigeria for us except Nigerians. But Nick, I wasn't dismissing diaspora voting. I was talking about it in relation to the form and character of the law. What I meant by that was that the ones that we already have, the laws that we already have, let us refine them to the point that they can work. I'm not against bringing in diaspora voting. Far from it, I'm not against. And sometimes I'm also outside when elections are conducted. So I still reserve the right to vote from any part of the country. So I'm not clearly against that. What I'm saying is let us refine, moving forward, the one that we already have. So back to the issue. The president has become President Bola Tinubu has been affirmed our president for the next 4 years. He has extended the olive branch to Peter Obi, Atiku, and 15 other contestants. What we need to do as a people is to put hands together and build the country called Nigeria. But let us not forget that the man we have at the top as #1 citizen of this country has so many issues, so many questions of integrity, personal integrity of his certificate, and that it is going to rub off negatively against Nigerians at the international level. Let us not forget that. Let us ensure that in future elections, people that contest elections must be rightly qualified to contest. Nobody says you must have a PhD, just an ordinary school cert. You don't even need to pass it. The Constitution, the framers want to ensure that you can read and write. Not ability to read and write adds to your rationality to take decisions. It doesn't remove your rationality. If you don't have it, it doesn't remove your rationality. But it just adds so that you are able to read, understand, and write. That is the whole essence of it.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Chukwuma Okoro. So big thanks to the two gentlemen that we've had on the show today, Nick Agule and Chukwuma Okoro, both public affairs commentators. We appreciate you for your thoughts and your time. And let's go to business now. Do know that this conversation will continue it will continue into the weekend and, of course, into the future, as Nigerians will continue to refer to the Supreme Court ruling. But on VOP this morning, let's get into the world of business. Now, in the world of business, Microsoft Corporation has stated that it will empower 10 million small and medium enterprises by 2025. The president of Microsoft Africa, Lillian Bernard, revealed this during a press conference in Lagos. Bernard noted that the tech giant will equip SMEs with essential tools, infrastructure, and scaling support facilitating their growth and fostering strategic collaborations. Further, she noted that fintechs are helping SMEs and the informal sector, which creates a bulk of employment as they provide 7 out of 10 jobs in the country and contribute about 40% to the gross domestic product of any economy. Well, Microsoft also signed a 5-year strategic partnership with Flutterwave to revolutionize payment in Africa. Away from that business story to another one very quickly too. The managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority has disclosed that a minimum of 6,000 seafarers call at Nigerian port monthly. Mohammed Bello Koko revealed this on Wednesday in Apapa during the commissioning of the renovated Mission for Seafarers Center, NPA. He explained that an estimated 4,000 foreign flagged ships visit Nigerian shores annually. The NPA boss stated that the country is witnessing improvement in inland traffic in the ports. Now, those are the business stories that we have for you at this moment. More in our news bulletins. But in the meantime, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get into other segments of the show.
When your morning